Hello and welcome to a very special episode of 4 Wales See Wales with me, Mel Owen.
And me, Will Hayward.
No Robin Morgan.
No Robin Miller. It's devastating. We have got a replacement.
We do, and I think they're very similar people in many, many ways.
Yeah, hair.
Yeah, well, no, one does, one doesn't.
Yeah.
Tall, white man.
Yes.
One with considerable power, and the other one is the First Minister of Scotland. Robin, we miss you. However, we are excited to have Mr John Swinney to join us.
Yeah, we are in the Vale Hotel in the Vale of Glamorgan. It is the British-Irish Council Summit,
yes.
Where you have the leaders of Northern Ireland, Scotland. Keir Starmer was here, Leonard Morgan was here. You also have the heads of
Jersey,
Guernsey.
Guernsey,
Guernsey.
It's like Brangelina.
I know. And the Isle of Man.
Yes.
And they've all come here, and the First Minister of Scotland has very kindly given up half an hour of his time to have a chat with the pod.
Absolutely. You've just run out of the main press conference. How was it?
I have. I asked a question to Darren Jones, who...
Oh, remind us who he was.
Darren Jones was the Labour cabinet minister who said that Wales... Well, when asked a question by a Lib Dem Welsh MP about the lack of HS2 funding, he said that he should just be more grateful for the funding that Wales received. And I asked him a question about that.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, he was incredibly contrite and said, actually, we've made a terrible mistake with HS2 and Wales has been really shafted. He didn't actually. He said Wales is getting hundreds of millions for extra rail funding. And then he mentioned the Burns Commission, which I think they just have on a permanent briefing note. And ultimately, we'll outline this in a future pod, but I thought his answer was a bit crap.
Absolutely. But hopefully John Swinney's answers will not be crap at all. What a privilege, actually, that we get an actual, a thick amount of time with him, because this is the joy of podcasting at the end of the day, that we do get to sit down and actually have some meaty answers. This isn't the news where we're just bish, bash, bosh, 3 minutes, let's wrap it up. We get a bit of time with him.
Yeah, and I think we always have a conversation, don't we, before these pods, and we try and work out how are we going to do it, because when you have a politician in front of you, it's a real privilege in terms of you get to ask the question of someone in power. And there's lots of people who don't get that privilege, whose lives are intimately affected by decisions
100%,
these people make. And so you want to hold them to account, but you also want to feel like you can have a real conversation, because I think that's one of the things you don't really get in political journalism, do you? And I know we were having a chat before we spoke to him. We'll see how this goes. Because we are a Welsh podcast.
Yeah.
I have no beef against Scotland, but I'm not journalistically that interested in Scottish politics unless it's about how it affects Wales. So I think we're going to try and get his views on Wales and also how any future SNP and future Welsh government relationships might work. But yeah, it's really fascinating to have these conversations, isn't it?
I'm really excited. Should we dive straight in?
Let's do it. Let's get Swinney on.
Let's get him in the seat.
So welcome to the podcast, First Minister of Scotland, John Swinney.
Thanks so much. Lovely to be with you today.
You are the First Minister we've actually had on 4 Wales See Wales, and you are not the Welsh First Minister.
Well, I'm delighted that I'm making that moment of history for you on this podcast. I love podcasts.
You'll be setting the bar for the Welsh one.
Well, I'm quite sure I would encourage the First Minister of Wales to come on to this show. My wife loves this podcast.
Oh, stop it.
So you might think that you've got sort of inner access to the workings of government in Scotland, but it's actually my wife who loves this
inner
podcast.
workings
And
of
said,
your household.
if you're going to Cardiff, you're going to go on this podcast.
Well, big thank you to her.
How could I stand in the way of that that encouragement from my wife?
Happy wife, happy life. This is you keeping her happy.
Very much so.
Clearly got very good tastes.
She has.
So first thing we wanted to ask you was around the perception of Wales in Scotland. And I'm talking politically here, because Wales is very different to Scotland in lots of ways in terms of not just attention that we have on our political system, but also how historically we've been as a country. Can you talk us through what you think the perceptions of Wales are in Scotland?
I suppose there's two aspects to that I would raise. The first general point, when I talk generally about Scotland, I think there's tremendous empathy towards Wales and Scotland. I think people in Scotland see themselves very much in the same sort of space as people in Wales, of basically having to make sure they've got to fight hard for their corner within the United Kingdom. I think that broadly sums up how people in Scotland feel. And a warmth, obviously, there'll be sporting occasions when we're maybe perhaps not on the same wavelength, but generally, politically, I think people in Scotland will see themselves on the same page. I think the second point I'd make is more unique to my politics and my party, that for as long as I can remember, indeed you can trace this back to, certainly in my knowledge, the 1960s, the emergence of a very warm relationship between Plaid Cymru and the Scottish National Party. So Gwynfor Evans won the Carmarthen by-election in Wales in 1966. Just after that, Winnie Ewing, who was one of the greatest figures in Scottish National Party history, she was selected to be our candidate in a by-election in Hamilton in 1967. And she came to the Plaid Cymru conference at that moment, and she brought Gwynfor Evans some heather and said before the heather bloomed in Scotland, she would join him in the House of Commons. And she did, as a young woman in her early 30s, as an absolute trailblazer for the Scottish National Party and for our politics. So out of that moment came a very deep relationship between Plaid Cymru and the Scottish National Party. Indeed, when I was a member of the House of Commons in the 1997 Parliament, I sat with the Welsh, with the Plaid Cymru colleagues. It was a great privilege to be with them, and a great relationship blossomed.
To that point, what do you make of Plaid Cymru's approach towards taking power in Wales? Like, from an outside point of view, it seems that the SNP have been almost, very, very almost aggressive in terms of knowing that they want to take power in Scotland. They have a very clear vision for what they want in Scotland. What do you make of Plaid Cymru's approach in Wales? Would you say it's been a bit more of a softer hand?
I think Plaid Cymru has obviously put in a very active amount of energy to try to win, but have not been successful so far in winning the election, although in the current context it's a very different landscape. And I think what we've witnessed in working with Plaid and in cooperating with Plaid is there's no lack of hunger on Plaid's part to win. It's just that they've not managed to get over the line. But I detect a change in mood in Wales now. The Caerphilly by-election was, I think, a landmark moment where Plaid were able to demonstrate that they could be the champions of defending the values that have always epitomised Wales, of being a welcoming, friendly community, and Plaid essentially championed those values in standing up to reform the threat in the Caerphilly by-election. And I really admire Plaid's campaign in Caerphilly. The sentiments behind that are sentiments I share, of we must always demonstrate the strong, deep values of community solidarity, of cohesion, of the drawing together of people. And that's what Plaid put forward in the Caerphilly by-election. That's what I put forward in Scotland. So there's another element of our partnership and our togetherness that comes together as a consequence.
So you and Rhun Iorwerth, the Plaid Cymru leader, have discussed a progressive alliance. Can you explain what that would look like in practical terms, what the situation is with that?
Well, what it is, Rhun came to see me just a few weeks ago, and we had a great conversation. It was obviously in the aftermath of the Caerphilly by-election, so I wanted to convey to him directly my personal congratulations on an incredible achievement and something that gives us all pride and hope in the protection of the values that we believe to be important. And then we also talked about some of the experience that we've had. We've obviously had a significant period in government. It's not always been straightforward, so we've had to meet challenges and address those challenges. And so I was sharing some of that information with him. But then we also talked about some of the values and the attitudes that we would bring to cooperation between ourselves. The first, of course, is that similar approach to the one that Plaid took in the Caerphilly by-election, of standing up to, frankly, the racist politics of Farage and reform. The second is about looking about how we transform society through the measures that we can take within our existing powers. So we've made a huge amount of of impact on reducing child poverty in Scotland. It's not as low as I would like it, but
Scottish child payment.
Scottish child payment is an innovation that we introduced, which is a direct payment to families in poverty in Scotland. And that's helping to reduce child poverty in Scotland. We've got child poverty about 9% lower than it is in the rest of the UK. And obviously the two-child limit abolition that the UK government has now done, which is long overdue. You should have done it in week 1 of the Labour government, but it's taken them 18 months to get round to do it. And we were going to do that anyway ourselves under our own powers in March. So that'll help to further reduce child poverty. And then because we don't have to take that measure, we can now take further measures to reduce child poverty even further. So I'm really optimistic that we've got a head of steam built up to reduce child poverty. And of course, Rhun was also able to share with me some of the proposals he's setting out about the development of childcare, which helps to play into that discussion around about reducing child poverty. So there's a sort of meeting of minds on some of these questions. And then latterly, there's some elements about, well, who we are and how we could work together. And there's an interesting moment that if Plaid are successful next year, and if I'm successful in the SNP campaign next year, we'll have a Sinn Féin First Minister in Northern Ireland, a Plaid Cymru First Minister in Wales, an SNP First Minister in Scotland. And that'll be a very different look to the United Kingdom. And out of that comes the opportunity to make further constitutional advances, which we all want to make.
Well, it will be interesting if you had a leader in 3 of the 4 nations of the UK who wanted to break up the UK. That would be a very interesting dynamic. Can I just, if you were to be in a situation where after May you are First Minister of Scotland, Plaid are leading Wales, one of the biggest things I think would make a difference to Wales is changing the Barnett formula. The Barnett formula works better for Scotland than it does for Wales, not down to any kind of active benevolence from the UK government because of population, how it's changed over the years. One of the reasons cited, including by Plaid, that we haven't made those changes to the Barnett formula is that the Scots are more reticent to change it. Would a progressive alliance perhaps lead the Scots to maybe helping Wales in driving forward changes to the Barnett formula?
I think what the scenario that you paint, what would change is that the power balance of the United Kingdom would change. And in all of I've been in Cardiff today for the British Irish Council. That's obviously an intergovernmental forum across a number of jurisdictions, including the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland and the Crown Dependencies. But there's intergovernmental forums within the United Kingdom where you can have, the 3 First Ministers sit down with the Prime Minister. So that's a very different dynamic in those discussions if we've got that shared agenda that can be, if there's a shared agenda that we can take forward and we can lead to pressure in the United Kingdom. Now, obviously, we have our perspective on the financial arrangements in the United Kingdom. Plaid will have their perspective on the financial arrangements in the United Kingdom, and we can argue for those. But I think there's opportunities for us to cooperate in a number of different areas, and we would find that opportunity to take that forward.
Does your compassion for Wales continue if, become the May elections, it's not Rhun ap Iorwerth who is leading us, it's reform?
That's a big challenge for me, because I've said that I would not cooperate with reform. So I've essentially said that if reform are elected to the Scottish Parliament, then I'll not be engaging with them, and that would be, and if reform were leading Wales, that would be an enormous difficulty for me. It would be difficulty, I think, for others within the United Kingdom.
I think everyone has a view on this question, but I'd be really interested in yours. Scotland has, in many ways, a better devolved settlement than Wales in terms of the ability to initiate your own changes, not least money you can carry over from your budget, borrowing capacity. How have you got such a better deal? Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend.
What has Scotland done historically to get to that point?
I suppose if you trace it back to 1997 and the election of the Labour government and the legislation for the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Assembly at that time, there was, I think, a more developed head of steam behind the proposals in Scotland than there was in Wales. Now, when the referendum took place in 1997 in each of the countries, there was a more emphatic endorsement of the settlement in Scotland than there was in Wales. It was quite, as I remember it was quite a narrow success.
Yeah, just over 50%.
It was just over.
51%.
So it was really quite tight. So in a sense, I think that illustrates the starting point was slightly different because it was much more emphatic. I think bluntly, the Labour Party in the 1990s feared the rise of the SNP, so they wanted to have a strong settlement in place to keep the SNP at bay. And so we started off with a stronger set of powers than the Welsh Assembly started off with. Of course, what then happened in 2007 was the election of an SNP government, which, of course, I think according to the designers of the Scottish Parliament was never supposed to happen. Well, it happened. And there was then a response from the UK government to say, well, to stop this going any further, we've got to offer them more powers. So there was more powers offered in the Calman Commission after, that would be about 2012, I think they were enacted. But by that time, Scotland had elected a majority SNP government and there was going to be a referendum on independence. And, of course, in the days running up to the referendum in 2014, there was an opinion poll that showed we were going to have a yes majority. There was huge anxiety, if you remember the moments. You know, the House of Commons suspended its business. All the Westminster leaders came up to Scotland. All the Westminster MPs came to Scotland to stop Scotland taking this decision to become independent. You know, they stopped business in the House of Commons so everyone could get the train, the planes north to stop the Scots doing this. So there's a huge pressure. And just before the referendum, Gordon Brown was wheeled out to make a big speech about if Scotland votes no, there'll be more powers for the Scottish Parliament. And of course we ended up, sadly, from my perspective, Scotland voted no. But the commitment had been given to more powers. And after the referendum in 2014, there was a commission established, the Smith Commission. I sat on it for the SNP, and we secured more powers. Crucially, the powers to undertake social security payments, which has allowed us to do the Scottish Child Payment, which has allowed us to reduce child poverty to the lowest level in the United Kingdom. So I suppose all of that detail I share with you to make the point that essentially Scotland's got a stronger power, a stronger set of powers because of pressure from the Scottish National Party and fear of the growth of the Scottish National Party amongst the other parties.
Culturally, whenever I am in Scotland, I spent a little bit of time. I went to Shetland this year.
Oh, did you?
I went to Fula. Have you ever been to Fula?
I have been to Fula.
What a wonderful... Did
you go on the wee plane?
I did. I felt very, very scared. We must put the population up about 6%.
Yep,
just going
about,
there.
Yes, we would do.
It was wonderful. I had Fula lamb. It was gorgeous. Mm-hmm. It feels in Scotland there is a sense of when we're independent, not if. When do you foresee that happening for yourselves?
I think it can happen very quickly. I've set out that I think Scotland needs to move on. I think Scotland and England are moving in very different directions politically. I look at English politics as an observer. I'm looking almost on a daily basis at opinion polls that show reform leading the way, projections of a House of Commons dominated by reform, and I loathe reform's racist policies and attitudes. So I think our countries are moving emphatically in different directions, and I want to make sure that Scotland's got the ability to get to that point and to become an independent country. And I've set out to my party's agreed all this. You know, we need to break the logjam of Scottish politics. We need people to have a choice about independence, and that comes about by electing a majority of SNP MSPs to the Scottish Parliament in May of next year. And then thereafter, I think Scotland can become an independent country very soon if the people want it to be the case.
On that basis, if the rise of reform in England to you shows a divergence in your politics, do you think the same is true for Wales then? That we are moving apart politically because we have to admit, reform are showing success in Wales at the moment?
I don't. Well, Plaid managed to see them off in the Caerphilly by-election, which I think is a source of enormous encouragement, and I think that's a distinctive and different pattern that's been emerging, and I think that's partly why Why is Plaid being successful? I think Plaid's being successful because they are standing up to the politics of reform, and they're offering people a bright and an optimistic alternative. I think what the problem in England is that everybody's running scared of reform.
Reform are growing fast. I've looked at Scottish opinion polls. They're polling about 20% now, as I understand. So is Scottish and English politics diverging, or is Scotland just a few years behind?
I think they're diverging because I think the scale, there's going to be an audience for the views of reform in Scotland. I can't say to you there aren't people that I've encountered in Scotland over my political lifetime that have not conveyed views to me on their doorsteps which reflect what reform is playing into now. So I've heard that, but I don't think it's predominant. I don't think it's the prevailing sense, where I think it is the prevailing sense in the debate in England, and that's what worries me about what lies ahead.
Can I ask you about the SNP and the Scottish Government's relationship with the Welsh Government over the last few years? When there was, for want of a better word, a common enemy in Westminster, so Boris Johnson's administration, and Mark Drake was leading the Welsh Government, there seemed to be very close ties, especially during COVID, between the SNP and Welsh Labour. Do you think, what's the current state of those relations now? And just really simply, do you think Eluned Morgan's doing a good job in Wales?
I think there's two aspects to that. I think there is a long-term collaborative approach between the Scottish and Welsh governments, which I think has reflected the fact that we have got different perspectives to the UK government. So I've sat in many discussions with counterparts in Wales in intergovernmental discussions in the UK, and we've been absolutely on the same page, and that cooperation is welcome. So I think that's been a constant feature. I think the second thing is that obviously with there now being a Labour government in London and a Labour government in Wales, I think there's a more determined effort by the UK government to try to work in a way that keeps the Welsh government on side. They're not really that bothered about keeping me on side, but I think they are more interested in keeping.
Do you think they are interested in the Welsh government? Because
I think that
what we get is that they're.
I think there's some attempts to try to keep the Labour government in Wales on side, and Eluned Morgan. Yeah, I have a very warm personal relationship with Eluned Morgan. She and I have cooperated during the periods, and I've been First Minister for slightly longer than Eluned, but not for that much longer. But we've always enjoyed a very warm, friendly, personal relationship, and I know that she devotes herself to the work that she undertakes in leading the Welsh government.
This week, I believe it was, there was news that at Scots and Gaelic was to be given the same kind of consideration as the Welsh language, as a minority language. And we've spoken earlier about how often Wales takes a lot of inspiration from Scotland, and we might be a few years behind Scotland, but I think on this occasion we might be a few years ahead in terms of what we hope to do with the Welsh language. What inspiration will you guys in Scotland take from Wales and how we've really pushed our language?
Well, we've on St Andrew's Day, the law came into force, the Scottish Languages Act, which officially recognises Gaelic and Scots as official languages in Scotland, which is a moment of great celebration. Now, you're absolutely right, Mel. We are catching up with you. So we've got lessons to learn. Well, actually, it's not we've got lessons. I think we probably have got lessons to learn, but we have learned big lessons from Wales about the nurturing of the Welsh language. What we've learnt from the Welsh experience is that by supporting education, in our case the Gaelic language, and by supporting broadcasting the Gaelic language, you can support the growth and the development of the language. So those are the two principal examples, I would say, that we've learned. So we've supported over a number of years, and this goes back to, some of this goes back to the 1990s when, Conservative Secretaries of State were supporting the development of Gaelic medium education in Scotland. We've continued that and worked away at that, and we now have a growing network, not nearly as extensive as you have in Wales, of Welsh language schools, but we have more Gaelic medium schools than we had in the past. And we also have MG Alapa, which is our Gaelic broadcasting channel, which is modelled very much on the S4C examples here. What's that all amounted to? Well, for the first time since 1971, in our most recent census, the number of Gaelic speakers has increased. So they were decreasing, and then in the most recent census, they are going up. And that's come about because of the support that we've put in place for the language, but we'll learn those lessons, so observing what Wales would do.
What I find really interesting is if you look at polling, I was looking at YouGov polling earlier, most people in Scotland disapprove of the Scottish Government's record to date. But the SNP are still polling as the largest party. It's going to sound like I'm a Leonard Morgan asking this question. But whereas in Wales, widespread disapproval with the Welsh Government's performance, and yet the governing party are polling terribly, looking to potentially dropping to third. Do you think that the reason behind that, the fact that the SNP are doing well despite not necessarily widespread approval of performance, is that because there's the independence element to it? Or do you think it's because it is a different party in Scotland to Westminster, whereas in Wales we have the same? I'd be interested in your thoughts.
I think there's probably three reasons that involve that. Part of it is the fact that the SNP will be able to command, although not as much as it has in the past, the support of people who believe in Scottish independence. Secondly, I think the fact that we've got a government in the United Kingdom which is spectacularly unpopular in a very short space in time is a factor. And the third thing is that the Scottish National Party has acknowledged that it's not got everything right, and it's working ferociously hard to get things right and to deliver for people, whether that's about reducing long waits in our hospitals or increasing the number of GPs, or about making sure we've got improved educational standards, or that society is safer, or that we're delivering a more stimulated economy, or that we're reducing child poverty. So it's a crucial element we've put in recent times, which is why we've gone from a situation in the summer of last year when we were behind the Labour Party to a position now in the polls where we're ahead of the Labour Party. And it's a combination of all those things, but fundamentally it's that improvement of the relationship between the SNP government and the public in Scotland.
Just finally, earlier this week, a plucky journalist published a letter that was sent by a third of Labour Senate members to Keir Starmer, essentially saying, you are undermining devolution with your actions, things like the Internal Markets Act and the UK government legislating in areas which are, by any definition, devolved. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with the third of the Labour Senate group.
And how does you relate to Labour in Scotland, do you think?
Well, if you go back to post-Brexit, so see that letter that was sent by the group of Labour Senate members, the points they were making were the points that Mark Drakeford was making when the Internal Market Act was going through the House of Commons. Indeed, they're the same points that Keir Starmer was making when the Internal Market Act was going through the House of Commons. And I can't remember who the Labour leader was at the time in Scotland. We've had a few. We're making the same points when the Internal Market Act was going through the House of Commons. So my view, the view of the letter writers are identical. The Internal Market Act was an attempt by Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, all these characters after Brexit, to undermine the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Assembly, to give Westminster the ability to interfere in devolved responsibilities and to spend in devolved areas. A totally insidious attack on the devolution settlement that people in Scotland and Wales voted for in 1997. And opposed to that at the time were the SNP, the Labour Party in Scotland, the Labour Party in Wales, Labour Party in the House of Commons. Now, Labour government in the House of Commons, I thought the first thing they would do would be to get rid of the Internal Market Act. No, absolutely no way. They've closed the door on that. They're keeping the Internal Market Act, and they're now doing all the things that the Labour members of the Senate are are complaining about. And I agree completely with them. It's an attack on devolution. It's an erosion of the Welsh Assembly and the Scottish Parliament, and we should have none of it. So I think they're quite right to write that letter.
You've got two very important things to do. You've got to get a flight, but there's a World Cup draw.
You bet there's a World Cup draw.
Who do you want? What would be an ideal scenario?
Well,
which country do you think are a pushover?
well, that's a bit. That's a bit of a hostage to fortune. I just want the easiest, least stressful draw imaginable.
So you don't want England?
I certainly don't want England. No. I think that would lead to a wee bit of tension. No, well, maybe we could be in different groups and end up in the final together. That would be bearable. But it's.
Is that more likely than Scottish independence? Which do you think is more likely?
Well, I think both are eminently possible. The whole experience of the game against Denmark has been. It's just been absolutely incredible how much joy it's brought. Watching the game, thinking 1 minute, we're 1 ahead, we're going to the World Cup. 1-0, we're not. 2-1, we're going to the World Cup. 2-0, we're not going to the World Cup. And then to have the sensational extra time finale was just beyond imagination.
And on the same night, Wales did beat Macedonia 7-1. I just think it needs to be said.
Well, for completeness, Mel, for completeness.
For Wales, see Scotland.
Exactly. So
we are in Wales, so just going to...
Exactly. So it's been very, very exciting. So we'll see what happens with the draw. So I'm not quite sure I'll see the draw because I'm travelling at much about the same time as the draw happens. I think it all depends on how long Donald Trump speaks for as to whether or not I see the draw or whether I'm in the air during the draw.
This podcast might be out by then.
It might be.
Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Diolch.
Thank you very much.
What an interesting interview. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's nice just to chew the fat with people, isn't it?
It is. And also, can we just... His wife listens to us, which also means he listens. It's all in the house, it's going on. We're in his ears.
Yeah. Alexa's pumping that throughout the Swinney household.
I love that for us. I hope it wasn't just flattering us. I think he meant.
I mean, if he was flattering us, it worked.
It worked.
And now I'm thinking, did we hold him to account in any way? No, it's really cool that people... I was going to say north of the border. It's 2 borders away.
It is, yeah, exactly. Well, it's almost like it's a different country.
So
to some people, Ireland, same country.
Our one reform listener has just turned off. Robin,
you're fine. Well, you like your main takeaways?
I thought there's a few things. We alluded to poor performance of the SNP. We alluded to the fact that, and he kind of sidesteps it. I mean, he did admit there's been serious issues with how the SNP have governed. What I did think was interesting is when we asked him about the Barnett formula, which is really unfair to Wales. And one of the key reasons it hasn't changed is because the Scots love...
Because of Scotland, yeah.
I mean, he in no way committed to changing that. He was never going to commit to changing that. And I actually think that could be quite a source of tension. What, if we get a Plaid Cymru government and we have an SNP government after 2 years, if the Scots continue to do much better out of this and Plaid say, well, kind of throw us a bone here, like support us in at least getting us good a deal. That I thought was interesting. I mean, there's no way the Scots want to change something that's working well for them.
One thing that I thought was really interesting is, they always say when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. He said very clearly, if Reform were to form the government in Wales, that kind of Wales-Scotland partnership is kind of dead in the water if it's going to be SNP who are leading Scotland and Reform are leading Wales. I think that's really interesting that partnership is very party dependent as far as he sees it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that would be... a Reform-led government in Wales, you had an SNP-led government in Scotland and a Labour-led... government in Westminster.
The loggerheads.
It's so hard to even... And you'd be in such a weird position where you'd have the we hate public spending reform begging a UK Labour government for more money. It'd be a bizarre situation. But I think it does illustrate how easy politicians make their life when they just say, we think reform are dangerous and bad. And
he said it very clearly.
I mean, he called them. He said racist. They had racist policies, didn't he? And that clarity of messaging, I think, is something that is one of the reasons why UK Labour, especially, have really struggled because they have said, we think reform's policies are racist, but they've also almost tried to acknowledge the legitimacy of reform's arguments. Whereas it's much easier as a politician if you just say, I think these people are dangerous and bad.
Yeah. I suppose he's in a position where he can.
Yes.
At the moment, but like you say, if we do end up in a scenario and we got those three very different parties at loggerheads in those 3 nations, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. But clearly, he's got a very close relationship with the Venacorn as we know him.
He didn't call him Venacorn, which I thought was a real misstep.
Exactly, for somebody who listens to the podcast.
I bet his wife was kicking off at home. I don't know, but she listened to it at home. Maybe she could listen to it anywhere.
But very interesting to see that they have a close partnership. And yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. I am looking forward to having Mr. Robin Morgan back. It feels very odd without him. Do you see how I lost my words because I missed him so much?
I think when Robin isn't here, it's like, I mean, it's quite good for my self-esteem because he's incredibly mean to me all the time.
Yes.
But I think from a broadcasting podcast point of view, he's a real loss.
He is an absolute loss. Robin, come back. We miss you. And we have some fun episodes coming up before the end of the year as well, which we're very excited for.
I want to say a big thanks to the Scottish Government who helped facilitate this. Big thanks to the Vale Resort who have given us a room.
The Cowbridge Suite, no less.
The Cowbridge Suite.
Oh, we need to mention that. So the last event that happened in here before this podcast record was the Scottish First Minister meeting the Prime Minister.
Oh yeah, Keir Starmer and John Swinney
right
had a bilateral meeting and they left very few pastries.
They did. You had one, was it all right?
That's not true. I had 2. And it was stale but free.
Well, what does that tell you about our politics? There we go.
Final thanks. Big thanks to Heyman Media. Absolutely. They have literally come here and in the space of half an hour set up a mini podcast studio which was fit for a First Minister. So big thanks to them. Mel, diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr iawn i ti. See you next week.